All right, this video is warranted because I've heard so much that Trey Lance is a bust. He sucks. You saw Mike Lombardi say that the day his mama took him out of the crib, he didn't have the instincts to be a quarterback. Emmanuel Acho on his program comes out and he's breaking down tape, which was wrong, by the way, but that's nonetheless. He says it's like he closes his eyes and says hut. Why is Trey Lance getting so much hate? I'm going to break it all down. I'm going to break down his story really from college to the NFL and why I think you guys need to calm down if you're already throwing him out. Before we get into that, be sure to like, subscribe, comment, and let's dive in. So Trey Lance, 23 years old, first rounder, third overall in 2021. And a lot of you probably know that I was a big supporter of Trey Lance. I still am. I believe this guy has it. But regardless, third overall, okay? 30 touchdowns, 1 interception in college, his sophomore season at North Dakota State, 18 rushing touchdowns. That one-year starter blows up his sophomore season after not playing his freshman year. And he misses out. And we do not discuss this enough because quarterbacks at the end of the day are fragile, okay? They are fragile. You do not want to mess up a rookie quarterback. You don't want to mess up a second-year quarterback. You really want to be careful on how you develop them. So keep that in mind when I say that Trey Lance, after his blow-up sophomore season, he's getting offers every which way to transfer to an Oklahoma here and, LSU and all the big schools. He decides to stay. Deserves credit for that. This is a guy that believes in loyalty. This is a guy that was an underdog as a 3-star quarterback. He signs, his letter of intent to go to North Dakota State. North Dakota State, Division I AA. They're the Alabama of the FCS, but they're still the FCS. So anyway, he misses out on that entire junior season except for one showcase game due to COVID. So right off the rip, I think we're really not factoring in, and I can't blame anybody because COVID was so different. It was like the lockout times 2, where you didn't really get to see, a lot of these guys didn't get fair pro days. They didn't get fair draft processes and what have you. But that's a year of development that Trey Lance doesn't have, which makes him a one-year starter going into the NFL. And he was drafted by a team, per reports, that wanted another quarterback in Mac Jones. And they balked at the idea because basically the public reactions, basically said it was ridiculous, right? So even if that's true or not, the 49ers have not done enough for Trey Lance. And there's not enough here necessarily to say Trey Lance is a bust. The quarterback ecosystem is broken in the NFL. I've said that so many times I sound like a broken record, but it is. If you don't pan out fast enough, you are gone. The only thing that's worse than the NFL quarterback ecosystem is the NBA. If you're drafted in the first round, it doesn't matter. You might be traded for a guy whose rights is overseas or whatever. But the point is that the quarterback ecosystem, the young quarterback ecosystem in the NFL is broken, and it is why you have teams like the Los Angeles Rams trading for Matthew Stafford. It's why the Browns traded for Deshaun Watson. Teams do not want to develop quarterbacks anymore. They just don't want to do it. They want to go out, they want to win now and all that. So I'm not saying it's wrong, but that's the way it is. There's a lack of patience. So then you look over 2021. The 49ers, they go 10-7. Garoppolo starts 15 out of 17 games. Lance is credited for 2 starts that season, in which he goes 1-1. He throws 5 touchdowns, 2 interceptions in that season, and adds 168 through the ground and a touchdown. So things are good for Trey Lance. He wasn't going to start. This is Garoppolo's team at this point in time. We know that his contract is up soon. So Trey Lance is going to come in. He'll start 2 games. That's great. He'll start next year, whatever. So that's what it looks like it's going to be. 2021 offseason, it's widely assumed it's Lance's team. And then the relationship with Garoppolo is souring. You could read the tea leaves. Actually, it was kind of out there in the pressers that Garoppolo wasn't going to be the starter. So then 2022 rolls along, and Trey Lance is in his second season, and the 49ers go 13-4. Garoppolo starts 10 of the 17 games. Brock Purdy, the Mr. Irrelevant quarterback, starts 5, wins all 5. Lance starts 2. Okay, This is when Lance's career trajectory for a lot of people just bottomed out. And what happened here? What happened? Well, there was an injury. But first off, if we're going to use the stats, if we're going to take 4 games that this guy started in the NFL and call him a genuine bust, we need to realize 4 games is not enough. Okay? It's not enough. Jared Goff went 0-7 with the Los Angeles Rams. The next year he was in the playoffs. The year after that, he was in the Super Bowl. Okay? Jared Goff right now, people have the Lions, doing great things, and he's helming that team at the offensive spot. We can't just assume, guys who have had, some success. Okay? There are guys that right out of the gate, they played well. Peyton Manning was not one of them. It took him a little bit. It wasn't a miracle right away. Peyton Manning was, killing it. He went through some hardships. You had Troy Aikman that went through some hardships. Quarterbacks have gone through hardships before. It's totally normal. Aaron Rodgers, to this point, if Aaron Rodgers started, at age 23, that would have been great. He did not. So Trey Lance is still ahead of the game, believe it or not, for most of these quarterbacks. But anyway, I'll get more into that as we go on. The point I'm making here is that his first 2 games, the stats are not impressive. 15 of 31 for 194 yards and a pick. What I need you to keep in mind is, first off, 15 of 31, 13 of 28 of those came in the first game. And guess what? For those of you that just box score watch and just look at just the stats and everything out there and are just bagging on Trey Lance, don't forget week 1 against the Chicago Bears was in a literal monsoon. It was downpouring. The passing game wasn't going to be great on either side, and Justin Fields didn't look particularly great either. But here's the thing, okay? You have that 46 completion percentage. It was in awful conditions that pretty much anybody would have struggled in. They didn't even want to throw the ball. The next game against Seattle, on a read option, he fractures and dislocates his ankle and misses the season. Okay, so right off the rip, you had the monsoon game, and then you had him missing the season early on in the Seattle game week 2. Now, we already know the story. Brock Purdy comes out eventually when Garoppolo goes down. He goes 5-0, then wins a bunch of playoff games, sends in the NFC title game, and then, all of that. Now everyone's excited about Brock Purdy. What I will say is the cautionary tale. There are guys that have jumped out onto the scenes and have never been seen again. They've fallen off a cliff. Do not forget Derek Anderson for the Cleveland Browns was a Pro Bowler. Okay, he looked really good. Where did he go? He fell off. There are guys that do that, okay? And so we've seen these guys in the past, and we'll see. Could be wrong about Purdy, but I don't think it's a guarantee necessarily that this guy is just going to wow the league and no one's going to be able to stop him. The film is out there now coming into the season, so if he starts, I'm just saying, don't be surprised if he has a sophomore slump. But anyway, we go back into it. It's important to know that Lance felt the brunt of playing the position. Now, going back to 2020, he had a knee meniscus trim before he went to college. It was coming out of high school, an injury he suffered. He fractured his finger in preseason of 2021, so he stayed pretty much fully healthy in college, although he only played 1 season, to be fair. Then 2 months later, in that 2021 rookie season, he sprains his knee, and now you have the ankle injury. So I think if you want to question his durability, okay, if you want to say that this guy, I'm a little concerned, can he stay healthy? He hasn't proven he could stay on the football field. Fine. Because right now, the quarterback sample size is not large enough to know what the hell he is. So that brings me to my next thing here, the narrative. Trey Lance is done. He's a bust. The reality is he's a 23-year-old quarterback who has started 4 games in the NFL. He is a productive runner at the very least. And to me, that shows something, because the takeaway here is that Justin Fields, who has a career 79.7 passer rating in the NFL, is now widely considered a top 15 quarterback or higher by some people. He's getting overrated because of his running ability. He came out in the same draft class. Justin Fields just has way more starts than Trey Lance. You don't think Trey Lance, with that rushing ability, you don't think he'd have a chance to do what Justin Fields did? I'm not saying he would, but I'm saying he'd have a chance. And if you don't think so, then you didn't watch Trey Lance at North Dakota State. So that brings me to my next point. It's fair to say the former 3-star recruit who chose Division I AA school should be considered a nice little underdog story. went to the NFL, third overall pick, rose above the whole COVID thing, was still able to get drafted third overall. It could be assumed that I think some, believe it or not, they saw Carson Wentz, and I think there are a lot of people out there that will scout the helmet and not the player who's wearing the helmet. So is it fair to say that Trey Lance is being treated differently because we saw Carson Wentz coming out of North Dakota State? I think it's possible. For a while, until guys like Drake London came out and Robert Woods and so forth, USC receivers were always viewed as busts. Anyone who wore that USC helmet playing the wide receiver position, I'm not touching them. Ohio State quarterbacks. This has happened. So that's the interesting thing there. I was thinking about that. I think that definitely has something to do with it. I think it's also fair to give the 49ers a little leeway. I've been hard on them about Trey Lance's development, but it is fair considering the injuries he's dealing with. Their plan was to start him in his second season, and they went out fully expecting him to be the starter. Week 1, plays in a monsoon. Week 2, he gets hurt. He suffers a season-ending ankle injury. Okay, so that was their plan, and it was derailed because of the injuries, to be fair to the 49ers. The emergence of Brock Purdy really muddied things up. And then, it's just not often you're going to find a guy like that end up being the saving grace of your team, lead you to the playoffs and all of that. And you got to give Purdy credit. He played well. But he did tear his UCL. And he was reportedly very close to almost having to get Tommy John surgery, which is almost a 2-year recovery time for MLB players, like mainly pitchers that have to get it in baseball. And it's been reported that he's been having a very hard time in camp. He's been throwing a lot of interceptions. And some are even saying on the feed, he's having a worse camp than Trey Lance, just no one wants to talk about. It's not the narrative. So what do we make of Trey Lance? Well, in the media, Trey's been ridiculed past the level of a football player. Okay? It's not even just analysis anymore. It's just straight disrespect. I mentioned earlier Emmanuel Acho coming at him, basically saying it's like his eyes are closed before the snap, and then he just says hut. He doesn't read. Well, I want to bring you back to that play, because that play in which he's saying that, obviously when the cover 2 is showing, you can't just throw it to the out. Trey Lance was pump faking that to get the streaking receiver open down the field, which would have been a cover 2 beater. That's what he was trying to do. He didn't have a lot of time. It's his first game in almost a year, and there's a very fair explanation that Trey Lance, believe it or not, made the mistake of forgetting almost in his head that this is the backup offensive line, and I don't have enough time. And that's why he took a sack. But instead, we're ridiculing him as a person. We're saying he's not smart enough. That's what the mainstream's doing right now. This is why he's the number one topic, it seems like. The media just made him their piñata this year. That's all anybody wants to go at. Is it a cover for Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, who was in the industry, and the 49ers? I don't know. But it sure feels odd, don't you think? And if you don't like Trey Lance, okay, but why? What is there not to like? You can't tell me you like certain players that have had run-ins with the law and have had all these allegations, certain quarterback that plays for the Cleveland Browns, and tell me you don't like Trey Lance. What has Trey Lance done? This guy's constantly getting badgered, and I'm sick of it, but I'm sure a lot of other just true football, analysts, football fans that are really knowledgeable about the game are sick of it as well. There needs to be a fair analysis, and there's not. It's gone away from Trey Lance processing the game and the speed of it, and it's gone more towards belittling his football IQ and his overall mental capacity. So that's what we're really at right now. And former NFL executive Mike Lombardi, who won 3 Super Bowls with teams that he was with, but was not a good GM with the Browns. That doesn't get thrown out there. But anyway, he's saying that his mama picked him up out of the crib, knew he didn't have the instincts to play quarterback in the NFL. I'm not even going to get into the undertones that kind of throws out there. You can use your imagination. But it's so messed up to say something like that. How, in what way is that, if you're a consumer of NFL content, NFL product, NFL knowledge. You just want to get smarter. You want to have some sort of, okay, this guy was an NFL executive. Like, he could give me some knowledge. How is that giving him knowledge? That's talking head stuff. That's garbage. One thing is for certain, though. Johnny Manziel, who didn't give a lick about anybody but himself, who didn't care at all about the playbook. I mean, it's literally out there. His agent or the Browns or whatever said he literally saw zero. He spent zero watch time on his iPad learning the plays. Johnny Manziel did not get that same ridicule as Lance this early on. This guy was constantly given excuses. Oh, it's Johnny football. He was a backup, and they just rooted for this guy to get in on the field. I mean, anybody who actually analyzes football and, watches the tape and really looked into him, Johnny Manziel was never going to make it. You shouldn't be getting that feeling with Trey Lance. Trey Lance looked like the second coming of Cam Newton back when he was the MVP on the Carolina Panthers that went 15-1 and were one win away from a Super Bowl. That's what Trey Lance's ceiling looks like, based on his college tape. But something happened in the NFL, whether it is just the 49ers don't know how to use him, or it's the injuries or the speed, I don't know. But there's no way for us to know for sure what happened, and there's no way for us to know that he can't come back from this whole skit because he's only started 4 NFL games, and the other games that he's appeared in, he's been used as a sub-package player. Why are we using quarterbacks in sub-packages at the goal line or trick plays? I saw too much of that. That doesn't help his development. So what is the deal? They're going to pick apart his preseason game now? I mean, even though it's the first time he's played football in almost an entire year, we're just going to absolutely rip him to shreds about his decision-making in the preseason game. That's not what it's about. He's got to get his football mentality back in order. And the best way to do that is play in preseason. And is he going to fail? Potentially. He hasn't played in a year. But this is the opportunity for him to go through those motions. And that's what I don't like, is it seems like everything for him is under a damn microscope. So it's not going to be perfect. It's not like he had Trent Williams covering his blind side, CMC in the backfield, Debo, Kittle, and Ayuk as weapons on the outside. No, he was asked to play with backups, and that's incredibly hard to evaluate him under those circumstances. Trey Lance, bottom line, is trying, but it's not easy to be a quarterback that started one season in Division I AA, missed his second season due to COVID, and then be thrown into the fire and pick up an NFL offense and win, especially with the injuries that he's been dealt. Shanahan's offense gets a pass because it allowed quarterbacks who are basic and work well within structure, like a Jimmy Garoppolo, and of course, like a Brock Purdy, to succeed. It's probably why they wanted Mac Jones. It's why I definitely believe that report is real. The problem is, one doesn't go out and grab a Trey Lance. If you watch the tape at North Dakota State, one does not go out and grab Trey Lance to run a basic offense. You get Trey Lance to allow his dual threat ability to transform an offense that is trying to get over the hump. See, this fits the bill. Because at the end of the day, the 49ers have had talented defense after talented defense, one of the best in the league, if not the best in the league, every single year. They've had a top offensive line. They have Kittle, they have Ayuk, they have Debo, they now get Christian McCaffrey. They have all the pieces. They need the QB. So the logic to going out and getting Trey Lance made a lot of sense. But did they think he was going to jump in and play right away? Or have they babied him to the point where he really can't? I don't know. But something isn't right here, and it's not just Trey Lance's fault. Again, he's only started 4 games. We can't just say we know what he is. And if you want to dog on the guy and act like he's not trying or caring about the sport, that's BS, because he worked with Jeff Christensen, who also worked alongside Patrick Mahomes this offseason. He changed his throwing motion. He improved the little nuanced things about his delivery. He cares. There's an ownership here. This is not a guy you should be rooting against just because the media is trying to poison you into believing it. They want a story. They don't care about this guy's life. They don't care about his future. If he fails, then they get to run a story every single week. They get to talk about how he failed as a 3rd overall pick. That's the way it is. The bottom line is Trey Lance wants to be better. He's been unfairly criticized by the media who wants to be a headline, but instead they're acting high and mighty. The whole "I told you so" too stems from the whole, who do you have as your QB1? And anyone who didn't have Trevor Lawrence was criticized in that draft process. Oh, you must not be, you don't know what you're looking at. You must not be watching the film. Guys, Trevor Lawrence had 17 interceptions and 11 touchdowns his rookie year. If Trey Lance did that this year, as a first-year starter, like true starter, you would be tearing him to shreds. Trevor Lawrence, are like, he'll be fine without Urban Meyer. Well, why does Trevor Lawrence get a pass? Justin Fields barely averages 100 yards per game. He's pretty much a running back as a quarterback, and I hate saying that because I don't think that's really true with other guys. It's thrown around with Lamar Jackson. But at the end of the day, Justin Fields is not an elite pocket passer. He has a hard time making quick decisions. And to be fair, he brought it on himself with the criticism, although he doesn't really get it, when he came out after this first preseason game and said, "This is easy. This is easy. This isn't hard." Well, it became hard. But at the end of the day, I mean, you talk about Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, same draft class. It's this whole, well, that was my guy, so I'm going to discredit another guy. I mean, that's not really fair, is it? And furthermore, what I will bring up here, don't forget, people said the same thing they're saying about Trey Lance right now to Geno Smith. And now those same people talk about Geno Smith like he's the savior of the Seattle Seahawks at age 30, years later. This guy's 7 years younger than Geno Smith. Believe it or not, you actually do have to let players, play. You have to let players tough it out. You're not going to learn. There's a cap on how much you can learn when you're not on the field trying for yourself, failing and just falling forward. And Lance may never be what I expected him to be. But to say we know what he is through 4 starts and a freak injury is ignorant to the history this league is run on. I understand it's a what did you do for me lately? That's the only reason why Brock Purdy is considered the starter right now. But the fact is that Trey Lance has not been covered professionally, not by everybody. I mean, there are definitely some people out there that do a great job. But Trey Lance, for the most part, by the mainstream, has not been covered professionally. People want him to fail for whatever reason. And this guy, his story is not written yet. And just because he ends up on another team does not mean he's a bust. There's a very good chance that Trey Lance is going to catch fire somewhere else. The bottom line is, regardless if it's on the Niners or it's on another team, I want this guy to succeed. We shouldn't be rooting against these kids. That's my thoughts. Okay? I'm curious what you guys think. I'm going to bat for Trey Lance. I know people will look at this and be like, the Rams fan is going for Trey Lance. It's more than that. I'm a football fan, okay? I don't like just complete nonsensical BS coverage of the sport. It's disrespectful to me. It's disrespectful to people who work their tail off on this platform. They don't have the big media. They don't work in a studio. They don't get millions of views. It's disrespectful because those people are putting in more work. By going out and just saying nonsensical crap like he wasn't born with the instincts, or to say it's like he has his eyes closed and says hut, like a quarterback isn't trying to read pre-snap, is disrespectful, especially a former player doing that in Emmanuel Acho. So that's my thoughts. I'm curious what you guys think below. Again, this isn't like a pro 49ers thing, but this also isn't like a pro Rams thing. I want this guy to succeed no matter what team he's on. I would want Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields. I don't root against players. I have a player that is a co-host on 2 podcasts I do. So I do respect the player and what they go through. And you could say, oh, they make millions of dollars. Doesn't matter, man. This type of coverage is absolutely insane. And to not have his back Kyle Shanahan could have come out and the 49ers, could have come out and had his back, when he was asked in the presser this past week, and he didn't. So right now, I don't know what Trey Lance is thinking, but I just have to say that if he does come out and he blows up the NFL when he finally gets that opportunity, you'll be able to look back on this video and say, look, it wasn't that Jake told you so. There are a lot of people out there that are trying to tell you that Trey Lance is better than people think. And even if they're not saying that, they're saying at least wait. Okay? Rome was not built overnight, and you are not going to find a franchise quarterback in 4 starts. So let's see what happens with Trey Lance, whether he gets traded or not. I'm excited to find out as a football fan in general, but appreciate you guys for tuning in. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share this around to anybody who, disagrees with Trey Lance. I only drop facts. I put everything out there. It's not like I went crazy with this. There's not a ton of graphics in this video, but I just wanted to give you guys an idea of where I'm coming from, why I defend him so much, and why I defend another guy like him. Because at the end of the day, this could be one of the future guys in the NFL. And, there's a good chance that he just hasn't gotten the opportunity. But anyway, that's going to be me. I'll see you guys soon. You guys take care. Later, folks.